Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 10, Lesson 2, where we're going to be learning about cones and cylinders. Now we're going to be on page 717, so go ahead, take a moment, make sure that you have your math book with you and that you have a pencil with you. All right, so we're on the first page and we see some ice cream cones, a jar of something, and what we want to do is just like we did in the last lesson, we're going to find a cone and a cylinder inside of our house and we're going to trace one of the flat faces. So I couldn't find any cones in my house. Some of you might have ice cream cones that you can work with. Since I didn't have it, I made mine out of paper. So all I did was grab a piece of paper and I tucked one of the corners in and I just started rolling it in like that. And from that, I'm able to start making a cone. You just need to make sure that there's a point at the top. And since it's a little slanted there, I just took scissors and I cut a line across so that I could have my cone here. So if you don't have one, you can always make one. And the really cool thing after making your cone, depending on how big your vertex is there, you might be able to turn it into a telescope. So that's one cool thing that you can do with this. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my cone, and this one right here is going to be my cone. And I'm going to put my flat face onto the board and trace it. Now, if I try going like this, that's not going to work. All I have is my point, and my point isn't a face, is it? No. Well, what if I do it like this? Well, that doesn't seem very flat. Alright, so I gotta do it this way. So I put it right like this. That seems like a flat face to work with. So I'll go ahead and get my green ready so I can trace that. I'm going to trace that right here. Bear with me as my paper wants to move as I trace it. Alright, that's pretty good. Okay, so here is the shape that I got, and if my paper didn't move so much while tracing it, what shape do you think that would have made? A circle, yes. So our flat face for a cylinder is going to look like a circle. Now, I also brought a couple of cylinders with me. I have a can of corn, and I have a little storage container with paper clips and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and take my can of corn, and when I look at this and I compare it to my cone, I see some similarities, but I see some differences also, kind of like our square and our rectangle. So it looks like they both have the same bottom, but if I look at the top, one's a point and one is still a circle. So let's go ahead and trace one of my flat faces for my cylinder. Now this is much easier because this is a lot more solid than a piece of paper. All right, so that was one side, and I'm gonna go ahead and trace my other side, see if that looks any different. Well, so that one gives me two circles. So my two flat faces for my cylinder are circles. So I want you to go ahead, trace your cone and your cylinder, and when you're ready, meet me on page 718, the very next page. Alright, so cones and cylinders are two more types of three-dimensional shapes. So we worked with our cubes and our rectangular prisms in the last chapter, and we're working with our cones and our cylinders. Now these are two-dimensional because three-dimensional. Two-dimensional is if you just have a flat shape. It doesn't have any height to it. Now this, so if I look at it this way, all I see is a circle. But if I turn it, I have some height to it now. That is my third dimension. That's what makes it from being flat, a little tiny circle down here, but then I add height and that makes it into a cone. So I have my cone, which will have one face, and one vertex. Remember, our vertexes are going to be those points, those corners in something. So we've got a point up here, that is our vertex. Now our cylinder doesn't seem to have any vertexes, does it? Or any vertices. So this one has two flat faces. I have my two circles, but then we add that height to it. That makes it our three-dimensional shape, but we don't have any corners. Remember when we were learning about our circles, they didn't have any vertices. So our cylinder doesn't seem to have any vertices either. So we're looking at it and we want to know how many faces and how many vertices. And I'll go ahead and trace my flat faces and then point out my vertices if we've got one. So first I'm looking for a face on my, what's this one again? My cone. So I'm going to trace this flat face down here. That's going to give me a circle, and I have one of them. And then right here is my vertex, which I only have one of also. So it's 1 and 1. Now I have my cylinder over here, and that has 1, 2 faces, but I don't see any vertices here. So we're going to have 0 vertices. So we have our cone that has 1 face and 1 vertex, and our cylinder that has 2 faces and 2 vertices. Or I'm sorry, 0 vertices. 2 faces, 0 vertices. Alright, so then we're going to move a little bit further down the page, and we want to circle which one it is. So is it a cone or a cylinder? And write down how many faces and how many vertices. Now I'm going to continue tracing out my faces because I think that really helps us keep count of how many there are and make sure that we get them all circled. So I'm looking at this one right here. It can either be my cone, which is making a long O sound, isn't it? Or my cylinder. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, this can't be my cone. My cone, I remember, is 1 and 1, has 1 vertex and 1 face, and that doesn't have it. So I'm going to circle my cylinder here, and then I'm going to count out my faces. So I have 1, 2 faces. So I'm going to write that here, and it doesn't seem to have any vertices, so I'm going to write 0 there. All right, next I have this shape here. Now this one has that point at the end. It kind of looks like an ice cream cone, which will help us decide which shape it is, which is our cone. And then this one has 1 face and 1 vertex. So your paper should look a little bit like this. When you get this all finished, I want you to start working on the next page. What you're going to be doing is at the top, you'll be looking at something like this, where you're going to be looking at a shape. You're going to be circling whether it's a cone or a cylinder. And you're going to be writing in how many faces and how many vertices it has. Then you're going to be looking at a 3-dimensional shape, and you need to circle which one of those 2-dimensional shapes shows the flat face that it has. So you'll be looking at a cone and you'll decide whether or not the flat face is a square, a triangle, a circle, a rectangle. And so you're just gonna think about how we traced it on the front page and circle which flat face that's going to have. And on the last question, it's going to show you the flat faces of the 3-dimensional shape, and you need to circle the real life item that matches it. So they're going to show you what those flat faces look like, and if you put those flat faces onto a 3-dimensional shape, which 3-dimensional shape will you get? So go ahead and work through that, and then we'll go over it on here when you're finished. Ready? Pause. All right, now, so we're at the top of page 219, and you should have worked through all of these. Let's go ahead and review and make sure that we have the right answers. So number 3, we're looking at a shape like this, and we need to decide, is this a cone or a cylinder? So this right here is going to be our cylinder, and let's trace out how many faces we have. So we have 1, 2 faces, And there are no vertices here, so we're going to write 0. All right, the next one, we have a cone, and that's going to have one face
I'm
right
pretending
here.
I'm flying a kite, only with the handle.
So we're going to have one face right here. So I'm going to write 1 right up top. And then I've got 1 point, which is going to be my vertex. So I have a 1 vertex. So we'll write 1 right here. Next, I have this shape right here, which is going to be matching this one. And I need to decide which one of these two-dimensional shapes shows what my flat face is going to look like. So I'm going to turn it like this, and which one does it look like? Does it match our square? Mm-mm. Our triangle? Nah. A rectangle? Mm-mm. What about our circle? Yes, we have a circle as a flat face for our cone. The next one we have our cylinder, which is kind of like my can of corn right here. We need to decide which one of these two-dimensional shapes has the same flat face as this. So we'll go through, and it doesn't look like a triangle or a rectangle. Ooh, it looks like our circle, so I'm going to go ahead and circle that one. Now number 7, it says we have these two flat faces, and they look like circles. So if I put my cone up, I have 1 circle, and then I have 1 vertex. So it can't be that one. What about if I try my can of soup, or my corn? So I have a circle and a circle. And I have 2 circles here. So it must be my can of tomatoes in our book. So we're going to go ahead and get that 1 circle. Alright, so now what you're going to do after you make sure that you have all the right answers, you're going to go to the next page, work on that one on your own. So that has a few word problems. Number 8 says, which 3-dimensional shape only has 1 face? So which 3-dimensional shape only has 1 face? Number 9, what shape are the faces on this cylinder? And you have a blue cylinder next to it. Draw each of the faces and explain to a family or friend why this 3-dimensional shape only has 2 faces. So go ahead and do that. And number 10, you're going to work on writing out a sentence. So it says, which shape is different? Explain why it is different. So which shape is different, and explain why it is different, and go ahead and write out that sentence. When you're all finished with that, go ahead and come back and we'll review those. So ready? Pause.
Hey.
I'm joined by everyone. Alright, welcome back. We are on page 719. You should have worked through it. I have gained 2 new friends to join us in this math lesson. Both Austin and Max wanted to join you. So we are looking, and we wanted to know which 3-dimensional shape only has 1 face. So we talked about our cube, and our cube had 6 faces. Our rectangular prism also had 6 faces. We were talking about our cylinder, which has 2 faces, and then we have our cone that only has 1 face. So what we're going to write on that line up there, but quietly, is going to be cone, and that has a long O because of our sneaky E at the end. So cone, C, ooh, not this one, C-O-N-E. Alright, number 9 says, what shape are the faces on this cylinder? And we need to draw them. So they have a picture of a cylinder there. We need to draw those faces. So what we have is 1 circle and 2 circles. So we're going to draw those 2 circles. And on the line, we're going to say that the shape that it has is a circle. So circle, C-I-R-C-L-E. Alright, number 10. Now this was a little bit of a tricky one. It wants to know which shape is different and explain why. So there were a couple things that you could have said in this. There were a couple different ways that you could have gone about answering this. One thing that you could have said is we're looking at these 4 shapes. We have a cylinder, and that has a circle face. We have a square or a cube that has a square face. We have a sphere, which we haven't talked about much, but if you take a sphere and twist it open and look at the middle, you would have 2 circles there. So that's a circle face. And then our cone, we know, has a circle face also. So we can say that the cube is different because it has a square face instead of a circle face. So we'll write the cube, C-U-B-E, is different because it has a square face instead of a circle face. Another way that they could be different, or another one that could be different, is the cone, because none of the other shapes have only one face. Every other shape has more than one face. So our cylinder has 1, 2. Our cube has the 6. Our sphere, like I said, if you take it and you split it open, you would have 2 faces. But our cone only has the 1 face at the top. So we could also write that as well. So there were a few different ways that you could answer this question. So if you have a little bit of a different answer, I'd like to know what it is and share what that is, because, you know, not every question has only one answer. Sometimes there are lots of different answers to it. When you're all finished with that, go ahead to the My Homework page. That's going to be on 721 and 722. You're going to just pick which shape it is and write down how many faces and vertices there are. You're going to look at a real 3-dimensional item and choose which face matches with it. You have a word problem, and then you need to look at the word and choose which shape matches the word. When you're all finished with that, take a picture, post it onto the Google Classroom, and then I will see you for the next lesson. Bye.